Within the military and special forces, small details often decide life or death. One such detail is the wearing of watches on the inside of the wrist. To outsiders, it looks unusual, maybe even impractical, but in combat zones and covert operations, nothing is done without purpose. Is this tactic about stealth, survival, or something more calculated and mysterious? The real reason for wearing a watch this way will shock you. The tradition of wearing a watch on the inside of the wrist traces back to World War I trench lines and the early days of combat aviation. Decades later in Vietnam, Benrus and Bulliver field watches were common, often strapped on the inside of the wrist, while British units leaned on Omegas and Rolex mil-subs. During the Gulf War and into the global war on terror, that same inward-facing style continued, this time with rugged marathon divers, CWC issues, G-Shocks, and even Garmin Tactics models taking over. And it's not only the US military, rather NATO allies, European special forces, and even foreign intelligence agents have been spotted wearing their watches this way too, which leaves us with the mystery. Why? Perhaps the most obvious reason is that wearing a watch on the inside of the wrist actually gives the glass or crystal a built-in shield. The forearm naturally takes the hit first, so the watch face is less likely to bang against the doorway during close-quarters battle, scrape across body armor, or grind into the dirt when a soldier goes fully prone. In effect, the wrist becomes a protective cover. As a matter of fact, some true military specification watches were even engineered with recessed crystals to absorb impact in the field. Imagine dismounting from a vehicle in full kit, gear snagging on every edge. In such an instance, the outward-facing watch would be the first casualty. On the other side, the inside-worn timepiece stays tucked and mission-ready. But as we're about to realize, protection is only part of the story. Another reason often mentioned for soldiers and covert operators wearing their watches on the inside of the wrist is practicality. You see, in the middle of weapons handling or close-quarters combat, having the watch turned inward means the time can be read with the support hand already extended on the rifle. No twisting of the wrist, no breaking focus, and no chance of being caught off guard. Of course, nobody expects a soldier to check the time in the heat of a firefight, but in long drawn-out situations like a sniper waiting motionless in a hide or intelligence personnel holding an observation post, that small adjustment makes all the difference. Even the slightest movement in those environments can compromise a position, and what better way to avoid a bad day in the battlefield than by wearing a watch on the inside of a wrist? But doing so isn't just about keeping both hands steady on a rifle or staying still in a sniper hide. There's another layer to the story which deals with shadows, reflections, and the kind of light discipline every soldier or covert operative lives by. In the field, light discipline can mean the difference between staying hidden and potentially making the trip back home in a body bag. Even the faint glow of a watch can create a light signature that gives away a position. Standard-issue analog watches often rely on luminescent paint, while digital models use a quick backlight. These features are totally fine for everyday use. However, the story changes when it comes to tactical setups. Through night vision goggles or the lens of a sniper scope, that faint shine is far more visible than most realize. Some military specification dive watches push visibility further using tritium gas tubes, which are tiny vials that emit a constant glow without ever needing to be recharged. You're more likely to find these gas tubes in field-tested watches from brands like Marathon and Luminox, which are famously linked to Navy SEAL teams in the 1990s. The problem is that the glow they release can easily be picked up by anyone scanning with night vision, and this is where the invisible wrist technique makes sense. Flipping the watch inward directs any light back toward the wearer of the watch instead of outward toward the threat. It's a subtle move, but in the world of covert ops and special forces, managing that light signature could make a big difference. Through the years, soldiers and covert operators found their own ways to keep a watch from giving them away. Actually, this trend can be traced as far as during World War I, when troops transformed pocket watches into tools worn on the inside of their wrists by soldering wire lugs onto the case. That tweak kept time accessible while keeping hands ready for rifles at any moment. Back in Vietnam, Navy SEALs improvised by fitting snap rivets onto their nylon straps. That little tweak let them clip on a thin leather cover over the crystal, making it easy to flip open when they needed to check time, and just as easy to snap shut when stealth was the priority. In the African bush wars of the 60s and 70s, fighters leaned on similar covers. However, for these fighters, wearing their watches on the inside of the wrist was meant to do more than just kill reflections. Instead, it also helped to keep dust, thorns and grit from wrecking their timepieces. From trench hacks to jungle improvisations, soldiers learned early that a watch could be both a lifeline and a liability. What they didn't know then is that this small trick of wearing a watch inside their wrists could pave the way for today's high-tech systems, ones that can keep you invisible and guarantee higher chances of returning to base in one piece. The smallest details often decide the outcome for survival. Secure yours with a like and subscribe and become part of the squad. Fast forward to today's battlefields, and those old-school field hacks have been built right into the tech. Modern tactical smartwatches do more than just tell time. They're about staying invisible when it matters most. Many of these timepieces now come with low light displays, night vision compatibility, stealth modes, and even kill switches to wipe sensitive data in seconds. One such example is the Garmin Tactix 7 Pro. On the surface, it looks like a high-end adventure watch, but on digging deeper you realize that it's packed with a host of features that help soldiers remain invisible on the battlefront. We're talking about night vision settings, a stealth function that disables wireless signals, and a kill switch that clears everything if the script takes an unexpected turn for the worse. That's signature management, the same concept operators have relied on for decades. Another perfect example is the Garmin Instinct Tactical Edition. With a single tap, the screen shifts to night vision mode, dimming down so low it won't blow the wearer's cover through goggles or scopes. It also has the same built-in stealth mode that you find in its sibling, the Tactix 7 Pro, that cuts off all GPS and wireless tracking. It's interesting to see that what started as soldiers flipping their watches inward or snapping on leather covers in the jungle has now become an integrated system baked into modern gear. Even though there are solid reasons for operators to flip their watch inward, it turns out that it's not just about function, it's also about culture, identity, and sending a quiet signal to those who know what they're looking at. In many ways, it mirrors the way other military trends start and then spread like wildfire. Take paracord bracelets that began as improvised survival gear, or the subdued Velcro patches swapped in the field that later became collectibles. Even the craze for rugged G-Shock watches or low-profile baseball caps with no markings followed the same path. Born in Special Forces units out of necessity, adopted by line troops who respected the look, and eventually crossing over into civilian streetwear. Wearing a watch inside the wrist falls into that same pattern, a small adjustment that started as a tactical edge but evolved into a quiet nod to a certain mindset. At the end of the day, flipping a watch inward is a quiet tradition that carries decades of battlefield wisdom and a subtle nod to military culture. Do you think this practice will survive in an age of smartwatches and digital tracking? Or is it destined to stay a relic of the past? Wearing a watch inward signals battlefield wisdom and military tradition. If this raised questions for you, wait until you see our last video on the shocking hidden dangers of smartwatches. It reveals risks most people still don't even realize.